Today on Big Red's Cooking, we make a Big Mary and taters. Hi, and welcome back to another Big Red's video. As always, I'm Big Red. So I got a real tasty treat for you, and this is definitely for anyone who's out west who's missing a little bit of taste of home. You know, the Big Mary is a classic sandwich. Taters, everyone loves their taters. You know, that said, I think I've done it just a little bit better. You know, there's lots of different copycat versions out there. This just happens to be mine. You know, and what really inspired me on this one, and I'm going to say hi to Lexi and hi to Grayson right now, and I know they're two of my favorite fans, and they love watching my videos with their mom. So Uncle Darcy says hi, and you know, hopefully your mom is going to do this one with you. So you know, kids love chicken nuggets, and you can basically turn this into chicken nuggets, or just like the Poppins from Mary Brown's. So as always, you know what, I'm not gonna bother standing here talking all day. Let's go on over to my bench and we'll pick up over there. So we're actually gonna get started with our taters first. So all I'm gonna do with these is I'm just gonna sort of cut them up, you know, trim away anything I don't want there, obviously, and just cut these into sort of nice wedge-sized pieces. And what we're going to do is we're going to boil these. So you probably have heard before about, you know, how you should cook your French fries twice, and the best fries are double cooked and things like that. And we're basically going to do the same thing here, except our first cook is going to be boiling them. So what that's going to allow us to do, that means when we put them in the fryer, or in my case the fat on my stove, is that I don't actually have to cook my potatoes then. All I've got to do then is crisp them up and get that really nice sort of coating on the outside. You know, now if we were doing this from scratch, what we'd want to do was we'd do our first fry at a very low temperature to allow the potato to cook before the outside gets too dark. But again, the advantage of taking these and boiling them, you know, they'll be cooked through the inside. It's going to eliminate a lot of starch, and it's going to give us a really nice sort of fluffy texture to the center. And then we'll have that real nice crispy coating on the outside. So ideally what you want to do when you're looking for potatoes for something like this, you want what in the kitchen world we would call a starchy potato. Now there's two types of potatoes, waxy and starchy. So, you know, growing up in Newfoundland, I used to hear people say wet potatoes and dry potatoes, you know, and you may have heard that before as well. So what we're talking about when we're talking about a starchy potato would be a dry potato, and our waxy potatoes would be our wet potatoes, and they're really used for different purposes in kitchens. For something like this, we want a nice dry potato. Waxy potato ends up being very soggy in the center, and really what they're much higher in sugar. We want something that's really starchy, lower in sugar. It's going to cook better, and it's going to give us the texture that we want. Anyhow, I'm just going to give these a rinse with some good cold water, and we'll get these put on the simmer. So really nothing to it at this point. Alright, so we're just going to let those simmer. Now I left the skins on. If you don't like the skins, you know, go ahead and peel them. Doesn't really matter. Cut them the size you like. I know some people like the really thin little wedges. Other people like the thicker ones. Ideally what you want to try and do is keep them as close to the same size as possible so that they cook very similar to each other. But it's not the end of the world. So go ahead and we'll just, you know, we'll let these simmer. And we'll come back once they're pretty much done. Okay, so I thought while my potatoes are simmering away there, that I'd get my dredge put together. Just save myself a little bit of time standing around without too much to do right now. I've already got my oil sitting here, and I'm going to get that on soon enough. Now, I'm going to use my mortar and pestle. I tend to buy a lot of my spices unground because I like to grind them out. They taste a lot better. If you don't have yourself a mortar and pestle, this is like one of the oldest kitchen tools in the world. It's really just a couple of pieces of granite, and you can get different forms. You can get them in ceramic or wood. I love the granite one. So I'm going to be grinding all my spices for the dredge in this. don't feel like you got to rush out and grab one of these though. So if all you've got is dried spices, go ahead and use those. Little tip though, if you got dried spices, especially if they're a little bit old and you want to get the maximum flavor out of them, take them and heat them up in a skillet for a few moments, just in a dry skillet. It's going to pull a lot of essential oils out, and you're going to find that the flavor is just going to be a little bit more intense. And as you've heard me say countless times, any of my loyal fans have been watching my videos, you know, if there's something I'm using in this that you don't have or you don't like, don't worry about it. None of it is really that key, that important. The last thing I'm going to say is that you're going to notice that I'm not going to put any salt into my dredge itself. I will season my chicken breast later when I start preparing that, so that can absorb into the chicken. But I'm not actually going to put any into the dredge itself. I prefer to season when it comes out. Salt has a tendency of breaking down our fat, and I'd rather be able to use my fat multiple times. So that salt's just going to promote that fat breaking down all the faster. So I tend not to put it in my dredges. Now you probably have seen recipes with salt into it, and that's fine. It's just a personal preference. So I've got in this bowl here, and again, you know, this recipe will be all typed up, and it'll be on my website, bigredscooking.ca, and you'll be able to find it in the description below as well. So I got 2 cups of flour here. What I'm going to add next is I've got white pepper in this. Now actually I'm not even going to bother grinding that down. So I've got some of my white pepper here that I brought back from Vietnam on one of my trips. And you see it looks just like any other pepper. I'm going to go ahead and throw that in there. Now again, if you don't have white pepper, all you got is black pepper, go ahead and use your black pepper. It's not the end of the world, right? And then we've got, let's see, we've got some mustard powder here. And this tends to give it a nice little bit of a kick. And I guess I could have thrown that right on in because that doesn't need to be ground down. Let's see, I'm just trying to make sure I don't miss anything. So next I want to get my ginger. Oh, look at that, I didn't even grab my ginger. Here we go. And I guess I'll just throw my ginger directly right into my flour. Then we got some thyme. Time is on our side. No, it's not. And I know I can't sing, but that's fine. A boss of mine used to say, in his world, everybody could sing because nobody was listening. And then some oregano. And some cumin. One of my all-time favorite herbs, basil. And this is actually a purple basil. Some sage. And this is some sage I actually dehydrated out. And one of my favorites, and again, if you don't have this, don't go rushing out for it, but I do find it adds a lot, is marjoram. I'm going to go ahead and throw my garlic right into the flour. Now, I tend to buy granulated garlic. And I don't know how well you'll be able to see that there, but it tends to be a little coarser than the garlic powder, and I find the flavor is just so much better. And finally, some onion powder. Now my onion powder is getting old, getting a little bit old, and now I think it picked up a bit of moisture from being in the kitchen. So I'm actually going to throw my onion powder right down to my mortar and pestle so that that gets all ground down and pulverized so that it mixes through nicely. And we can see our potatoes are simmering along quite nicely here. Just give them a little poke. Well, they're almost done. I think by the time I grind this down, I'll be ready to take those off. Oh, this smells so good. That's one of the things I love about the mortar and pestle, is that you tend to get that, just this amazing release of aroma as you're grinding up all those spices together. I'm just going to go ahead and drop that right down on top. And you can see how nice and ground those spices are. So we're just going to take a whisk. We're just going to give this a nice whisk. I want to make sure everything is equally distributed through there. Smells fantastic. Alright, so let's have another look at our potatoes here. Oh yeah, they're nice and soft and tender. They're pretty much cooked right through. We get these all drained. Okay, so what I'm going to do now is I'm actually going to take these potatoes and I'll lay these out on a cooling rack here. So I want to be able to eliminate as much of that steam as possible. I want these to dry out to some extent. And what I'm actually going to end up doing with these, I'm going to let them cool for a few more minutes. But I'm actually going to pop them right on into the freezer. And that's going to help to dry them out a little bit more. And it's going to help us to get a much nicer, much crispier coating on the outside, because they will be frozen and they won't end up overcooked on the inside. And it's a bit big for me, so I'm going to just go ahead and slice them in half. You get by me somehow, so there we go. So we're going to go ahead and pop these into the freezer, and then we'll pick up in a few moments and we'll start getting our chicken ready. Okay, so I just realized, I was looking down here, there's one of my most favorite ingredients I forgot in my dredge. And this is what gives it a little bit of a kick. And this is some smoked paprika. So this has got almost a bit of a cayenne level heat to it. But it's going to give it a little bit more of a smoky flavor to it as well. So give that a little stir through. We'll just put that to our side. And I'm going to grab my chicken there now and we'll get cracking at that. And I'll get these put away. Alright, so my potatoes are cooling. You know, I've cleaned up my counter. I've put my spices away. One of the things that I try and drill for my students all the time, and anyone in kitchens, period, for that matter, CAYG, clean as you go. You'll also notice I have a white cutting board here for my chicken breasts. Anytime I'm dealing with chicken, I don't take any chances whatsoever. I have this board. I only ever use it for chicken, so I reduce down the risk of cross-contamination. I've got my fat on heating. Now, I would actually strongly encourage you guys to make sure you're using a proper deep fryer. You know, I feel comfortable enough using fat on top of the stove. I've got a thermometer in there so I can maintain my temperature. I have my fire extinguisher right there at the ready. You know, you need to be really, really careful when you're working with hot fat. Anytime you're putting anything cold and wet into it, it can cause it to bubble up. So unless you're a trained professional as I am, I do not recommend doing stovetop deep frying like this as I'm doing. Alright, so I always like to remove the tender from the back. And what I'm going to do is I'm actually just going to cut that up into smaller pieces, and we'll sort of use those almost like little bits. Now this is a really thick breast, and it's actually too thick to be able to cook properly, and plus it's thin at the end, and it's just going to end up being a monster big piece of chicken then to try and bite through. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to pound this out a little bit. So anytime I'm pounding out meat, especially poultry, I don't want anything going flying across the room to potentially contaminate something else. So I always like to cover it in a bit of plastic wrap. Now we're not trying to pulverize this to death. It's already dead. We don't need to kill the second time. We're just trying to flatten it out some. And what we're looking for is something around, a little less than a centimeter thick. A little, about a little less than a ½ inch, we'll say. Yeah, so we want that nice uniform thickness right across. So when it's lying, it looks like it's lying flat. Now, that's much larger than my bun is. So what we're going to do, we're going to take this, we're going to trim this down. Again, these here pieces, I'm not throwing those away. Those will get floured up and deep fried. Be a little bit of a snack, So feel free to go ahead and trim this up. You're just going to end up with a bunch of little bits. So you get something that's closer to the shape of your bun. You make a nicer sandwich for yourself. And of course, dealing with chicken, I just gave my hands a good wash. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to spread this around. You'll notice I'm using a fork, so I don't have to worry about contaminating me or any of my other tools. I'm going to go ahead and give this a little sprinkle of salt. So what I want to do is I want to be able to season that chicken and let it absorb through the meat. And give it a little pepper as well, even though we got some pepper into our dredge. I like to give a little bit of pepper right onto the chicken itself. And we're going to let this sit for about 10 or 15 minutes while our fat comes up to heat. And then we'll start our dredging process. So I'll be back again in a few minutes. Okay, so our fat is just about up to temperature, so I'm going to get at my chicken here now. So I'm going to start by making my egg wash. And basically what we're going to do is we're going to coat our chicken in some flour. And then we're going to dip it into this egg wash. And the flour basically allows the egg wash to stick to it. And then we'll take it and we'll run it through our dredge. So what I like to do, I've got my 3 dishes here, and I want to make sure I don't go contaminating my flour. So I'm just going to sprinkle a little bit right there, and I'm going to sprinkle some into the bowl here. And that way, if I get any left over, I can use it down the road without any risk, because it will not have come in contact with that chicken at all. So we're going to start with our smaller pieces here. And that way we can have those for a bit of a snack while we're doing everything else. So those go right on into our egg wash. From our egg wash down into our seasoned flour. And from our seasoned flour down into our fat. And what I try and do as much as possible is spread them around so when they're first in there, there's no worries about them sticking together. Gives that flour a chance to sort of seal itself up so none of the other pieces are sticking to it. So while those are frying, we'll go ahead and get our chicken breast ready. This here is probably one of the most important pieces of equipment in a kitchen. Again, this is one of these things that I would highly recommend you buying. You can buy them at most grocery stores, things like that, or you could order it online easily enough. And it's an instant probe thermometer. You know, chicken is a really dangerous product, or it can be if not handled properly. So I want to make sure that this chicken is fully cooked before I go eating it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take one of the largest pieces and I'm going to check the internal temperature of it. Now, and so by doing that, what I'm looking for is I want a temperature of at least 175 degrees Fahrenheit. And if it's achieved that temperature, which it has, well then I know it's safe to eat. It's fully cooked and there's no risk at all. There we go. Okay, so now that our little bits are all cooked, let's go ahead and put our breast in. And try one of these. Oh. So good, and I haven't even had salt yet. Like I say, where I don't put any salt in my dredge, what I do is I salt my stuff as soon as it comes out of the fat. Alright, so with our chicken cooking, we can go ahead now and get our taters ready, and we're going to do the exact same thing. I'm seeing how these are going to get cooked immediately, and they're going to be fully deep fat. I'm not too concerned about any raw chicken potential using these same containers. So this really just hasn't been sitting around long enough for it to be of any concern at all. I'm going to make my life a little easier with these potatoes. I'm going to throw them in a bowl so I can give them a good toss. So basically I've done the same thing as I did with my chicken. I coated in my flour and into the egg mixture, the egg wash, and then back into the flour again. And giving these a really good spin around, make sure they're well coated, and make sure that none of them are stuck together. And if they are, just pull them apart. So let's go ahead and check the temperature on our chicken. I think we're looking pretty good here. Oh yeah, that's done. Salt on top. And with the taters, I like to use my spider here. That's what this is called. So I want to make sure I don't go burning myself as I lower these in. One thing you really want to try and avoid doing is overcrowding your fat, whether you're doing it this way or whether you're doing it in a deep fryer. If you put too much in, your fat's going to get really cold. It's not going to properly cook. So the last of my taters are in my fat here now. So what I'm actually going to do is I'm going to start getting my sandwich put together. I'm certain by the time my sandwich is done, the last of those taters will be all finished up. So I'm going to go ahead and pop my bun into the toaster. So I think it's got to be toasted a little bit. I got some lettuce leaves here that I cleaned up earlier. I'm going to give these a little bit of a shred. My dogs love lettuce. Watch this. Check this out. They go crazy for this stuff. All gone. No more. I like to put a slice of tomato on mine. Again, you don't like lettuce? Don't put it on. Don't like tomato? Don't put it on. It's pretty simple. These guys love tomato too, though. Sit. Sit. Good girl. Cyan, sit. Good boy. Okay, go. Come on, go. So I've just lightly toasted my bun. I'm not looking to get it crunchy. I just want to sort of warm it up a little bit. Bit of mayonnaise. Now again, you know, I like mayonnaise. I actually buy the olive oil mayonnaise, but if you prefer Miracle Whip or whatever your favorite condiment is, go ahead. Sometimes I do this little bit of spicy mayonnaise. I'm not going to bother this evening. Of course, we get our shredded lettuce right up on top of that. And then there's that. Look at that. And some taters for my first round. There you go. So why don't we meet back over on the counter and we'll give this a little sample. So there you have it. You know, it's a few extra steps for sure. Obviously you can run to your local takeout and pick this up. But there's something that's really satisfying about making it yourself. And just look at that. Look how good that is. And then you know exactly what's in there. You can control it. A little bit more of this, a little bit less of that. So you know what? I'm gonna go ahead and take a bite of this sandwich right now. Love these things too much. So there you go. Not much to it. You know, go ahead, have a look at the website for all the details and the instructions, all the correct temperatures, things like that. I'll have all that information there. You know, if you like this video, please go ahead and share it. You know, especially for you folks who got friends and family out west. No Mary Browns out there, not that I'm aware of anyhow. So they might be craving for a bit of taste of home. So why don't you send this video to them so they can make this themselves. You know, so keep coming back, keep enjoying some good food. Let me know what you think of my videos. Please hit that like and subscribe button at the end if you haven't done so yet. And if there's anything you'd love to see me do a video for, certainly drop me a message and say hi. All right, bye for now, and we'll see you again next time.